to frequencies that are from frequency-specific microcurrent. Now, this is a disclaimer that you should read, but I want to talk about harmonizing your bioenergetic field. Do you have any idea what that is? And how you can use the Mag Healy to harmonize it. So, I developed frequency-specific microcurrents. But where did the frequencies come from? They were developed in the early 1900s by MDs and osteopaths, medical physicians in the US, UK, and Germany. And they were used by thousands of physicians until around 1930 to 34. Medicine in early 1920s labeled electromagnetic therapies and frequency therapies as fakes because pharmaceutical medicine had just developed. And they decided that drugs and surgery were to be the only tools of medicine, that nutrition, herbs, homeopathy, and frequency therapies were outlawed. They were quack, they were fake. And every healthcare intervention except for prescription medication and surgery and radiation was outlawed. Now, physicians who use these tools would lose their license. Some practitioners were persecuted and even put in jail. And the researchers and the history of how they developed the frequencies were lost when the researchers died. Have you ever cleaned out your grandfather's library when he passed away? What happens to his books? What happens to all the research? So the devices went into the back room of the clinic and they were covered up by a sheet and hidden or put in the trash. Until there was one osteopath from England. He was born in Australia. His name was Harry Van Gelder. He was a naturopath and an osteopath. And he bought a practice in 1946 and walked into the back room and took the sheet off and saw a machine under the sheet. And that device was made in 1922. He found it in 1946, and it came with a list of frequencies. Now, in 1983, George Douglas, my partner, worked with Van Gelder and brought home a list of the frequencies, and I just put it in a drawer, just in case. And the list looked like this, but there were words next to each one. And we can't put the words in because that makes it medical. And the words described what the frequencies were for. So I met George in 1991, and this was the machine we had. I just finished chiropractic college in 1994 when I was 47, 30 years ago. And in 1995, George found the list in a drawer. And he suggested that we use the frequencies with a 2-channel microcurrent device because Van Gelder's old machine had 2 channels. I have no idea how the frequencies were derived. How did somebody in 1922 decide that 191 hertz was the frequency for the tendon and 195 hertz was the frequency for the bursa? Who knew? And we're uncertain of the mechanisms of action, we do know that the 1920s equipment was not microcurrent. It was direct current because the machine plugged into the wall. And the 1920s therapy was not called frequency-specific microcurrent. It was just resonance therapy. Now, when we apply FSM, the two channels have to intersect when the frequencies are applied at the same time. Now, when you do that, the two frequencies cross, and there is this mix. When the frequencies intersect, it creates an interferential effect that includes the frequency from A and the frequency from B, and the sum of the two frequencies and the difference between the two frequencies. And we're not really sure which portion of the, We're not really sure which portion of the field produces the effects, but we do know that both frequencies have to be correct to create balance and harmony in the tissue that you choose. So I first used the frequencies in 1995 on a patient that had muscle pain and tightness. And then in 1997, I decided that we had to teach the frequencies to see if the results were real. Did the effects that we see, are they real? Or is it just because I'm a nice guy and the walls in my clinic were pink? Who knew? So I taught a class of 25, and by June, so they were first taught in January, by June we knew that the effects were not only teachable but reproducible. Research in animals and in humans. So there's the animal research, and there's the human research. I've accumulated over the next 25 years. We have 20 peer-reviewed papers, a medical textbook, and the consumer book. How many of you have read The Resonance Effect? Yes? Good. I've made a difference. And now there are 5,000 practitioners in 23 countries in every medical discipline. So it's established. It's not like it's new, 1997. It's reproducible, it's teachable, it's reliable, but you have to do the right thing to the right thing. It's non-invasive, it's low risk, and it's comfortable. You can't feel the current. The only thing that happens when the frequencies are correct is it makes you kind of sleepy, right? So how do they work? What is resonance? Even with the Healy, Marcus does a brilliant job describing the physics and the quantum physics. But what is resonance on a physical level? Resonance is the tendency of a system or a bond to oscillate at large amplitudes in response to some frequencies, but not others. At the resonant frequencies, small forces can produce very large amplitude vibrations. In the 1800s, they found out that a troop of soldiers marching across a bridge in step would start to vibrate. And if they stayed in step, it would resonate with the bridge and match the frequency that held the mechanical bonds of the bridge together, and the bridge would come apart and they would all end up in the river. You know the trick when the singer who sings, Julie Andrews, right, sings the note that shatters the crystal glass, right? My chemistry teacher taught me that the reason this trick works is that there is a precise frequency that holds lead atoms together in a 70% lead crystal matrix. And the lead atom is in a 70% lead crystal matrix. And the lead atoms vibrate with the singer's note as long as it is precise and sustained. She can hold it until the molecules vibrate. Then the lead crystal comes apart because the resonance causes the lead atoms to vibrate, and it destabilizes the bonds, and they just come apart. The lead crystal glass shatters. And resonance is incredibly powerful, even on large structures. This was the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It was a new design, it was thin, it was flexible, and it was placed across a narrow strait. And there was a mild rainstorm that brought wind and rain that you'd find in a normal rainstorm, 30, 40 mile an hour winds. And it caused the bridge to begin to sway. When the swaying reached the resonant frequency that held the bridge together, the bridge developed a sine wave because these two posts were identical distance. There was a sine wave created, and ultimately it matched the mechanical frequency that held the bridge together. And then the whole bridge just came apart. So how does resonance affect the human body? Every moving electron creates a magnetic field. You know that you have current in your body, yeah? You're positive at the top, negative at the bottom, positive centrally, negative distally. And because your body is full of moving electrons, your body has a magnetic field, and every organ in that body is part of that magnetic field. Every chemical and electric bond, it's the bonds that have the resonant frequency. And cell membrane receptors must have resonant frequencies, right? Does that make sense? So, this looks like an enzyme. What is it? It's molecules, it's atoms. The theory behind resonance interventions, everything that we do with Healy or mag-Healy or frequency-specific microcurrent, is that interference inhibits proper function of these enzymes by creating a loss of harmony and function between cells and organs and systems that interfere with the appropriate function of the whole system. Every bond has a frequency that resonates. Newtonian physics describes large objects, but falls apart at a molecular level, at a quantum level. Marcus did a very good job of describing that. Your body is a large object made of molecules, atoms, and subatomic particles that are held together by electromagnetic bonds. You look solid, but there's actually more space inside of you than there is stuff. And how is this current conducted? Water conducts current, right? You all know that. Water lines the gel that's inside cells and forms structures that act as a semiconductor. So you know that 85% of your body is water, right? And it's not just in your ankles when you've been sitting on a plane for 14 hours, right? It's everywhere. And inside of a cell, the water molecules are held onto this gel matrix, and the hydrogen atoms flicker. And when the hydrogen atoms flicker, there's a hole that is in exactly the same place because the water molecules are in exactly the same place. And that hole is always in the same place, and it makes the water inside your cells, the water that's in your blood, like a semiconductor, just like a silicon crystal that's in your computer, your cell phone. So water lines the gel matrix inside the cells, the molecules vibrate and turn the cell into a semiconductor like silicon. This bioenergetic field is an electromagnetic system that looks solid, but it functions like a semiconductor network, conducting current, charge, and information. And if you think about it, because each of you has a magnetic field, all of you are connected, but that is another conversation. So frequency-specific microcurrent uses these frequencies that I found on a list to resonate with interference and restore harmony. So in physics, it's called biologic resonance, biophysics. It explains the effects on living tissue, so pathogens, immune molecules, TNF-alpha, pathogen-associated molecular patterns, damage-associated molecular patterns land on this receptor and change kinases that change transcription factors, that change genes, that change RNA, that create a cellular response. So drugs and nutrients, herbs, act like a key in a lock that interact with this receptor, change the membrane receptor, and change the cellular response. So when you take ibuprofen to reduce inflammation, how does it do that? It does that by landing here and changing this to prevent those from causing inflammation. What we think is happening with FSM is that the frequencies appear to act like your key remote, your key fob, opening a lock with an electromagnetic signal instead of a key. How many of you used your key fob to open your car door in the last week? Everybody. Yeah. So the frequencies appear to influence cell function electromagnetically with a frequency-specific signal. So how do we know that frequencies affect imbalances? Experience. It took me 5 years and 50,000 patient visits before I believed that the frequencies actually did what they seem to be doing. I'm hard to convince. And research. We worked with researchers and clinicians and produced documentation that showed at least certain frequencies we are sure do exactly what we think they're doing. And then we have practitioners that can treat patients and correct imbalances and improve the health and harmony and balance in the patient. Resonance is physics. It's not magic. It's just physics. 2 tuning forks separated on each side of the stage. You strike one tuning fork, and the other tuning fork will vibrate and make a tone across the room when the first one is struck. But if you put a piece of paper or a stick in between the two, if something interferes with the resonance, it creates imbalance, lack of harmony, even lack of function. There won't be a sound from the second one. What creates a lack of harmony in a human? This is Abraham Maslow, and he talked about the basics: hunger, stress, fatigue. That's the foundation, the basic needs. Fear, pain, and injury. That creates a lack of harmony. Loneliness and isolation, psychological needs. lack of achievement, prestige, feeling of accomplishment, fear, and then frustration and stagnation. When you have the feeling that there's so much more that you could or should be, and you're stuck, that creates lack of harmony. Remove the interference, restore balance and harmony. If something interferes with resonance, it creates lack of harmony and loss of proper function. Remove the interference and function normalizes. This is not magic, it's physics, right? Resonance theory suggests that if the interference is removed, it may restore balance and harmony between cells and systems, helping to harmonize the bioenergetic field. That's biophysics, biologic physics. In the human body, everything is connected to everything. You cannot do something to your digestive system that does not affect your brain. You cannot do something to your brain or your emotions that isn't going to affect your digestive system. Frequency-specific resonance is not magic. It's applied biophysics. So, what we trust you to do when you use the Mag-Healy is to be prudent and respectful. If imbalances do not improve, the user should seek proper medical evaluation and treatment when using the frequencies to enhance harmony. You can do both. You can use frequencies to support the system, and when needed, don't be afraid to use proper medical intervention. We cannot and do not make any claims about the physical effects of the frequencies. We can only say that the frequency combination harmonizes the bioenergetic field. What does that mean? Harmonizing the bioenergetic field? Do you know what that means? The Mag-Healy contains FSM protocols that should be safe and effective for most people under most circumstances. It's not a medical device, it's a wellness device to harmonize the bioenergetic field. It won't be 100% effective for everyone who uses it. It's very specific, and it should not be used instead of medical intervention, right? The duration, frequencies, intensity, frequency naming, what we call them, and the descriptions of the frequency programs are, our understanding of the interaction, frequency modulated magnetic fields of the bioenergetic field have not been confirmed by independent studies. Do you know why that is? I want to ask you something. Are you made of physical matter? Or are you made of energy? Are you energy that coalesces into a physical existence? What do you think? If Einstein's correct, there's no difference, because energy and matter are more or less equal, modified by a constant, and that's way more physics than I can talk about. For centuries, philosophers and physicians and physicists have had this discussion, but there's no conclusion or certainty because there's no way to prove that one perspective is correct. You get 3 physicists and 3 philosophers in one room with a bottle of wine and just sit there and listen for 6 hours. It's fascinating. That is why this will never be confirmed by independent studies. Come on, there we go. So, the book that talks about how I developed frequency-specific microcurrent is called The Resonance Effect, and apparently it's in Japanese. I know it's in Mandarin, German, French, and English, and it's an audio book in English. To achieve lasting effects, this is what we're talking about with supplements and lifestyle. You have to change the stable state. So correct frequencies can change can create changes that change the harmony of the field. If you look at water, well, ice is water. What makes it ice? The surrounding environment has to be 0 degrees centigrade. It's the environment that makes water ice. Then you add energy to that, and it becomes a liquid. It's the surrounding environment between 1 degree and 99 degrees centigrade that makes it into a liquid. You add more energy into the system, and it becomes steam at 100 degrees centigrade. But it's the surrounding temperature that makes water steam. The changes that we create with the frequencies can become permanent when the patient's metabolism, attitude, lifestyle, mechanics, nutritional state support the change in state, right? This is our motto, if you will. When you talk to one person, this is all you can do. What Martina said, one person, that's all. You have no idea what changing the life of one person can do. For me, any vision to change the world, it's too scary. I can't even do that. One person. You focus on the person you're talking to. If you bring wellness to that one person and changing that one person's life,